Of all the blood groups, y'all have the most stressed nervous system. Do you feel that way?
Yes.
In balance, it's less obvious, but when out of balance, if you... So let's talk a minute about how blood type is determined. Now, for those of you that I've done a blood typing test on, you saw what we did. But what actually happens is we compare the coding on the red blood cell to particular types of sugars, and whatever that sugar coating is determines your blood type. So in the case of a B, you are a combination of glucose and something called D-galactose. And so you can see there are many, many sugars in the world, but those include the blood type sugar as well. So you can see these are fructose plus D-galactose, but you can see what the other blood groups are. So when you start looking at how these build, O is fructose only, A's are fructose plus something abbreviated GalNAc, and there won't be a test later, so I'm seeing eyes glaze over. Don't worry about this. Just want you to understand a little bit about how the blood types come together. These are fructose plus D-galactose, and then ABs are all of that. So from this chart, it should be clear that the O negative is called the universal donor, and the reason they can give blood to any blood group is that fructose is a part of every blood type. On the flip side, ABs are the universal recipient. Since they have all three blood sugars, they can receive blood from anybody. So if you've ever wondered how that worked, that's how it works. Does that make sense? Okay. So let's talk just a minute about transfusions, because that's more normally what we think of blood type, right? If you're going to have a procedure, they want to be sure to have blood on hand, and it has to either be from the universal donor or it has to be somebody of your own blood type for you to receive that blood. So it's important from a transfusion perspective, but it's just as important from a food perspective, and that's where I'm heading with this. That when you eat foods that are not correct for your blood type, it literally will kick you into an autoimmune response. You'll have symptoms like respiratory infections, mucus production, and intestinal disturbances. So in talking with some of you before we got started, you have in the past eaten things that you found out were not good for your blood type. Did you have these kinds of issues? Did you have excess mucus sinus issues? Sometimes it's upset stomach. So these are very minor reactions to food that isn't chemically compatible with you. So let's talk about the concept of a lectin. Who's read Dr. D'Adamo's book? Anybody? Okay. So you might be interested to read it after we talk about this. He talks about the concept of a lectin, which is a little piece of protein in many, many foods. And those lectins cause agglutination. So think of agglutination as the cells getting very sticky and kind of just sticking together or gluing together in a pile. So it should be obvious that if the cells are clumped up, that they can't perform their mission in the body. So you can see that cells should be free-floating, they can be touching but not overlapping, but when they're just amassed, it leads to inflammation in the body.
Which is what I saw when I did my blood thing.
Exactly, and I see it in everybody who doesn't take digestive enzymes. Exactly right. So lectins, these little pieces of protein, can very often be blood type specific. When we think about castor beans, they cause everybody's blood to clump together. So castor beans would not be a good food for anybody, unless of course you're trying to do away with it. But most lectins are blood type specific. So I give the example of a banana. When the lectins are indicated for your blood type, you can eat the food and your blood type, your blood cells stay apart, they stay separated. And in the case of a banana, good for both O's and B's. In the case of an A, because the lectins are counterindicated for the A, when they eat a banana, it causes the blood cells to just mass up. Does that kind of make sense? Okay. So when we talk about the lectins and adhesion, because that's what causes the clumping, notice that your blood cell with the sugar coating, which is the B blood sugar, glucose and D-galactose, that you have what's called binding sites. The little gnarly looking thing is intended to represent a lectin, and notice that the B blood sugar has kind of a shape to it, And notice it matches the shape on that particular lectin. So when you as a bee eat a food that's not good for you, the lectin and the sugar on the bee adhere, and that's what causes the agglutination. So that's physically what's going on in your body when you eat something that you shouldn't. So think of agglutination as inflammation, and inflammation, swelling. Inflammation is behind 80% of the things we go to the doctor for. Think about that. So if you can head that off through diet, you're that much better off. When we think about inflammation, all of the medical conditions that we're familiar with and we talk about, anything ending in itis is a condition of inflammation. So think about all the things that end in itis. Simple things like tendonitis, sinusitis, anything you can think of that ends in itis means inflammation of that part. So you can tell when you look at a list of medical conditions how geared we all are to just accepting that inflammation happens. Now, when we talk about lectins, we talked a moment ago about minor reaction to them is increased mucus production, even a tummy ache, heartburn, congestion. Tomatoes, you mentioned that one. Lentils, any lentil eaters in here?
But it doesn't count for me.
Peanuts,
Yeah.
big problem.
Yeah.
Buckwheat, and I know y'all all are gonna rush straight home and eat some buckwheat. And then sesame seeds, also kind of an issue, yeah. And these are the 7 worst foods. So there are many other foods not good for a bee, but these are the 7 most inflammatory bee. So if you don't give up anything else, you should give up these 7. And if you're eating a lot of something, like you mentioned, you were eating a lot of chicken, cut back a little bit and see how you feel. So the 7 most damaging to a bee. Claire, if you'll go ahead. And these are the medical conditions that we were talking about. So as you look through these, you may recognize some of them as things you're suffering from, or family members who are also bees are suffering from. So there's a good chance that they're eating the wrong foods, albeit good foods, but just wrong for them. Do you all have other bees in your family? Or are you lone bees? Lone bees. Okay. And a lot of people don't know their blood type, so.
But B's and O's are completely different, aren't they?
They have some similarities, and we'll get to that.
Bananas.
Yeah, bananas, yeah.
That's one.
But I was thinking more in terms of characteristics.